When you go quiet, the narcissist doesn't feel calm. They feel alarm because silence, your silence, is the single thing they can't bend, reshape, or twist in their favor. And if you've ever wondered what actually runs through their mind day after day, when you stop fueling their ego, stay right here. What they experience will surprise you. If this is already resonating, take a second. Breathe. You're not imagining their behavior. You're not exaggerating the power of your quiet. You are reclaiming yourself. And the more you recognize how they function, the more you regain authority over your life. So stay with me. The first day is where the real psychological impact of your silence takes root, and it hits the narcissist deeper than anything you could have ever said. The moment you stop engaging, they don't interpret it like a healthy person would. They don't consider that maybe you need time or that something came up. Their mind snaps instantly to one thing: ego alarm. Your silence isn't neutral to them. It's a threat, a wound, and a direct challenge to the grand image they hold of themselves. They're used to you responding, explaining, justifying, clarifying, smoothing things over. And when all of that suddenly disappears, they feel their internal world shift. They experience an abrupt loss of control, and control is their lifeline. Without it, they suffocate. On this first day, they fall into their usual set of beliefs. They'll break soon. They always come back. They rely on me more than I rely on them. These thoughts are not reality. They come from the fantasy universe they've built, where everything revolves around them. Your silence puts a crack in that universe, and cracks create fear. But they hide that fear behind arrogance. They convince themselves you're playing a game they're still winning. They may even grin at the idea that you're trying to provoke a reaction, because in their mind, you're incapable of separating yourself. But beneath the arrogance is agitation. They can't sit still. They check their phone more often than usual. They scroll through old messages. They search for hints that you're still circling around them. They might even replay old audios or memories, not because they miss you, but because they want to reassure their ego that they still matter, that they haven't lost their grip. Your silence brings in the one thing they dread: unpredictability. They have no idea what you're thinking, what you're planning, or what your next move might be. That mental uncertainty is agony for them. And even on day one, the cracks in their confidence begin showing. Day two is when your silence starts sinking in and the narcissist begins to feel something they hate acknowledging: withdrawal. Not emotional withdrawal, control withdrawal. They relied on your reactions far more than you realized. Your replies, even the annoyed ones, kept them alive inside. They fed on your attention, your explanations, your attempts to repair things, your desire to keep the peace. When all of that vanishes at once, they feel it the way an addict feels the absence of a substance. They become restless, distracted, and strangely hyper-focused on you at the same time. They begin monitoring for any sign you might slip. Did you view their profile? Did you post something? Did you accidentally interact with their content? They're searching for proof that you're still reachable. On the second day, their mind enters analysis mode. They reread your last messages. They interpret your silence as a tactic, not a boundary. They assume you're doing this to get attention because that's how they operate. They assume your silence is a performance, not a decision. They begin predicting how long you'll last, convincing themselves you can't maintain distance. And every hour that passes without hearing from you adds irritation to their ego. They'll never admit this irritation. They might even act colder, louder, or more detached outwardly, pretending they're fine. But in their mind, they're circling, unable to understand why you're not responding the way they expected. This is also the day they become quiet observers. They watch your online activity like it's a mission. They check timestamps, photos, bios, status changes, anything that confirms you still see them. But the growing fear inside them is simple. What if you're not watching them at all? What if your silence isn't a tactic? What if they actually lost influence? Day 2 is where confusion begins mixing with anxiety, and for the first time, they sense something slipping out of their hands. Day 3 is when the narcissist's ego begins scrambling for protection. Your silence has lasted long enough to unsettle them, so they start doing what they always do, rewriting the story. They cannot accept that you stepped back because you're drained, hurt, or finally finished. That truth is too threatening. So instead, they build narratives that protect their ego and restore their imaginary superiority. They tell themselves you're being dramatic. They decide you're too emotional or too attached to remain quiet for long. In their mind, your silence is not a boundary, it's a ploy for attention. They truly believe you're still revolving around them even if you're silent. They begin creating fantasies where you're thinking about them nonstop, checking your phone, waiting for their message. They may even imagine you coming back with apologies. This isn't random delusion, it's self-defense. Their ego cannot handle the idea that someone might pull away without their permission. So they create a reality where they remain in control, even when evidence says otherwise. On day 3, they might also start telling themselves they're the one being wronged. They think, I didn't do anything to deserve this, or they're overreacting, or they're trying to manipulate me. This victim mindset shields them from accountability. Blame becomes their armor, and they cling to it. What's ironic is that while they're rewriting the story, they're also keeping a closer eye on you. They want every piece of proof that supports their invented narrative. If you stay silent, they say you're sulking. If you're active, they say you want attention. If you post something positive, they say you're pretending. No matter what you do or don't do, they twist it to protect themselves. Day 3 is when the fantasy grows because facing reality would mean accepting they're losing control, and their ego would rather distort everything than admit that. Day 4 is when their internal world shifts from denial to irritation, and that irritation grows into anger. Your silence, which they once dismissed and then tried to rationalize, becomes a direct attack on their fragile superiority. They don't see your silence as a boundary or a response to their behavior. They see it as disrespect. It injures their ego in a way they cannot handle. And when a narcissistic ego is injured, the first reaction isn't sadness, it's rage. That's when scarcity sets in. Behind closed doors, they start wondering who will fill the void. They need someone to listen, to react, to admire them, to calm their ego. Without that, they feel bored, empty, irritated, and uneasy. They might start scanning for replacements, old contacts, friends, exes, anyone who can serve as temporary supply. But even as they search, they can't escape the discomfort your silence is causing. It's like a persistent echo reminding them something has slipped from their hands. On day 5, their thoughts become scattered. One moment they convince themselves you didn't matter. The next they wonder why you haven't broken. Then a surge of fear hits. What if you realized your worth? What if someone else is giving you the validation they kept from you? These thoughts terrify them. That fear, combined with insecurity, causes them to obsess over your silence more intensely than ever. They won't reach out directly yet. Their ego won't allow it, but inside they're alert, watching, calculating, because for the first time, the possibility feels real. They may be losing control over you, and that is the one outcome they never prepared for. Day 6 is when their panic becomes strategy. Your silence has lasted long enough to disturb them, annoy them, and make them question their power. They're no longer just uncomfortable, they feel threatened. And when a narcissist feels threatened, they don't look inward, they don't take responsibility, they don't suddenly understand your pain. Instead, they switch into testing mode. They want to know one thing: do I still have access to them? Their mind becomes tactical. They plan tiny, low risk ways to get your attention without risking rejection. They won't send something vulnerable. They won't apologize. Instead, they send something minimal: a like on an old photo, a quick reaction, a one-word message, a random emoji, a song lyric, something that looks accidental but isn't. These small breadcrumbs are their way of tapping on your emotional door without admitting they want back in. This isn't affection, it's bait. They want to measure how fast you respond, what you respond with, and whether you respond at all. Any reaction confirms they still hold influence. Silence tells them they're losing you, and that terrifies them more than the idea of losing the relationship. Inside, they're restless and curious. They anticipate your reaction. They even rehearse excuses in case you ignore them. Oops, that was a mistake. Didn't mean to send that. Was checking something. These excuses protect their ego, but behind the scenes, that tiny interaction is a huge confession. They can't tolerate your silence anymore. Day 6 is where their mask starts cracking. They test you not to reconnect, but to prove they still have power, and if you don't respond, it shakes them deeply. Day 7 is when the fear under their facade starts to surface. They've cycled through shock, denial, ego fantasies, irritation, anger, and subtle tests. But now something deeper begins rising: fear of exposure. Your silence has lasted long enough that they can no longer predict you. That unpredictability scares them more than anything else. They start thinking, what if they figured me out? This thought terrifies them. They start replaying moments in their mind, not because they miss you, but because they're scanning for mistakes. Did they reveal too much? Were they too obvious? Did they go too far? Narcissists rely heavily on confusion to keep people off balance. But silence clears confusion. Silence gives you space to think, to reflect, to connect dots they hoped you'd never connect. On day 7, they sense that awakening. They fear you are no longer under their influence. Another fear emerges. What if they're telling people? Their image, their reputation, their persona, it means everything to them. The idea that you might share the truth terrifies them. Your silence signals that you've withdrawn emotionally. And when someone withdraws emotionally, they begin to see clearly. A narcissist knows this. They know that once clarity sets in, their behavior becomes undeniable. So they worry. They may appear calm or indifferent on the outside, but inside, they're pacing, restless, imagining scenarios they can't control. They don't know if your silence means you're gone, whether you're healing, or whether you finally see their patterns for what they truly are. That uncertainty is torture. Day 7 is when they feel the weight of losing control, losing influence, and losing the ability to shape the story. And to a narcissist, that loss is catastrophic. Day 8 is where desperation collides with pride, forming a storm they can't escape. Your silence can no longer be minimized. Now it feels real. Now it feels like distance. And distance to a narcissist is danger because distance means you're thinking clearly. Distance means your emotions are leveling out. Distance means you are stepping out of the emotional cage they built. On this day, their thoughts swing between extremes. One moment they soothe themselves with delusional self-importance. They can't live without me. They'll come back. They always come back. These thoughts act as ego bandages covering the wound your silence is creating. But the next moment, those bandages slip and fear hits them hard. What if you're actually done? What if you found someone who treats you better? What if you've finally seen their patterns? They despise these thoughts because they force them to confront a truth they never wanted to acknowledge. You mattered more than they pretended. This is also the day they begin preparing their approach for returning, but only in a way that preserves their pride. They rehearse messages in their mind, something light, something jokey, something that makes it seem like they're unbothered. But beneath every rehearsed line lies one motive. They want proof they still have influence. They won't send the message yet. Their ego won't let them move first. Instead, they quietly observe. They monitor your profile. They study your silence like a puzzle. They wonder if you're healing. They wonder if you're waking up. They wonder if you've broken free from the cycle. And deep inside, they know something is happening that they can't undo. Your mind is clearing, your heart is grounding, your vision is sharpening, and their biggest fear becomes unmistakable. Your silence is transforming you, and they can't control who you're becoming anymore.